I am a big fan of the Internet Archive. I go to archive.org almost every day. Certainly several times per week. The work that I do at the Lund Journal is made infinitely easier because of the amazing archival work that the Internet Archive employees have done and volunteers have done over the last several years. So many magazines and videos and periodical clippings that exist in digitized format, often searchable throughout archive.org. It's just amazing. Their amazing internet wayback machine is astoundingly useful to look at how the internet was, how the World Wide Web was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, to see how things changed over time. It is, as a journalist, one of the most useful tools that exists today. But I need to put all that aside. Those warm, fuzzy feelings, that immense gratitude for the amazing work that they do, I need to put that aside for this story. Because what is happening right now in the courts and by the actions of the Internet Archive could have rather extreme consequences for the future existence of the Internet Archive and for other archivists in multiple areas, whether it be software, audio, video, periodicals, books, etc., across the world and certainly across America. I wrote this article, The Internet Archive's Last-Ditch Effort to Save Itself, a lost lawsuit, a flimsy appeal, and misleading public statements. Things aren't looking good for the Internet's archivist. I wrote this article and published it some hours ago, but I have a lot more I need to say on this. This is an incredibly important topic. I'm going to read this article to you now. Apologies for those of you who have already read it, and I have a lot more to say as we go along. On April 19th, the Internet Archive filed the final brief in their appeal of the Hachette, I can't pronounce anything, but I can read it. So Hachette versus Internet Archive lawsuit, for which judgment was handed down against Internet Archive last year. What is curious is that this final brief fails almost completely to reasonably address the core issues of the lawsuit. What's more, the public statements that followed by the Internet Archive appeared to be crafted to drum up public sympathy by misrepresenting the core of the case itself, which suggests that the Internet Archive is very much aware that they are likely to lose this appeal. And after careful reading of the existing public documents, I went through everything. I went through every single publicly filed document relating to this court case. It truly is difficult to come to any other conclusion. I don't see how the Internet Archive wins this appeal. I don't see how they could possibly appeal it further and expect any further better results, and we'll get into that. The Internet Archive does some critically important work by archiving and indexing a wide variety of culturally significant material, from web pages to decade-old magazines. I mean, come on, I cannot. The amount of work I would have to do if the Internet Archive didn't exist would be just obscene, and much of the work that I do just wouldn't be possible at all. In this work, they help to preserve history, an extremely noble and valuable endeavor, which makes the likelihood of this legal defeat all the more unfortunate, because the outcome here could be catastrophic for archive.org. So what is Hachette versus Internet Archive? Here's the short version of this lawsuit. So the Internet Archive created this program that they called Controlled Digital Lending, or CDL. The idea was pretty simple. You take a physical book, you scan it, you turn it into a digital file, right? A PDF, whatever. And that digital file can then be loaned out to people on the internet. Very simple and straightforward idea. Now, in 2020, this is a little over about 4 years ago, almost exactly, the Internet Archive removed what few restrictions existed with this controlled digital lending program and allowed an unlimited number of people to download the digital copy of a book. So they took someone else's book, scanned it, and gave it to everybody else, right? This is what they did. Whether you like it or dislike it, that's just what they did. The result was a group of publishers filing the Hachette versus Internet Archive. I think I pronounced that 17 different ways. My apologies to Hachette, or however it's pronounced, lawsuit. The lawsuit focuses on two key complaints. The first being that the books were digitized, converted from physical to digital form, and distributed without the permission of the copyright holders, like the publishers, the authors, anyone who owns the rights to those books. And the second being that the Internet Archive actually received monetary donations and other monetary rewards, including like affiliate links and whatnot, as a result of freely distributing that copyrighted material. Again, without permission of the copyright holders at all, often without even notifying the copyright holders. Effectively making the Internet Archive CDL a commercial enterprise for the distribution of what is best described as pirated material. Now, whether you like that or I like that, it almost doesn't matter. That is just kind of the definition of what they did. Now, the lawsuit was decided against the Internet Archive in 2023, with the judge in that case declaring, quote, that there was no case or legal principle that supported their defense, which was fair use. The Internet Archive said they could do all of this. They could copy all the books. They could digitize them. They can put them into a different format. They could do it without notifying the people who owned the copyrights on the books, and they could distribute them to people on the internet, and that was fair use. Now, the judge disagreed. Now, that judgment clearly was appealed by the Internet Archive, which brings us to today and their final defense. In theory, this is their final defense. Theoretically, they could appeal this further should they lose. We'll see. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So what is the final defense of the Internet Archive? So let's take a look at the final brief. This is the final brief that they are putting forward for why they feel that this ruling should be overturned. Okay, and what's really nice about this, and again, I love the Internet Archive, you can get the full, unredacted, uncensored PDF on archive.org. So I provide the link in the article so you can go read the whole thing yourself. A couple dozen pages. Some of it's fairly dry reading. Some of it's actually kind of entertaining. Some of it's kind of interesting, and it has some interesting thoughts in it, but it's all there and we can read all of it thanks to archive.org. So it's one more example of how terrible it would be if we lost archive.org. So the general defense of the Internet Archive is fairly simple. The Internet Archive's controlled digital lending falls under fair use, and therefore it is legal. Okay, so let's look at two of the key arguments within the brief and the issues with them. All right, we're just going to look at two because we could look at these for quite some time. The first, quote, controlled digital lending is not equivalent to posting an ebook online for anyone to read. Okay, that's an argument that they're making, and they're saying it, therefore they should be legal, right? So the interesting thing here is that this argument, which was in the introduction of the brief, is really, really a strange defense to make, because the controlled digital lending program, starting in March of 2020, literally posted a massive book archive online for anyone to read. This was branded the National Emergency Library. It was done in response to COVID and lockdowns to make lots and lots of books available to an unlimited number of people. Now, good intentions we have to put aside for a moment because we need to look at the legality of this. Again, emotions need to stay firmly off to the side, because the Internet Archive is now attempting to claim that they did not do the exact thing, the very thing that they proudly did. They even issued a press release about how they did it. They literally declared to the world that controlled digital lending is, at least starting in March of 2020, putting an ebook online for anyone to read. An unlimited number of people. And now they're saying that it is not. As such, I don't see a judge being swayed by this poorly thought out argument. Their own argument is immediately contradicted by their own press releases. It's just not going to fly. There's actually several arguments as such throughout their brief where it directly contradicts their own public statements, like almost word for word. It makes for a very bad legal argument. The second one I want to look at is also quite interesting. And I'm going to read this quote to you. It was from, I can't remember exactly what page of the brief it was from, a little bit further deeper in. Quote, because of the huge investment required to operate a legally compliant controlled lending system and the controls defining the practice, finding fair use here would not trigger any of the doomsday consequences for rights holders that publishers and their amici claim to fear. Okay, so did you follow that? Did you did you follow what that argument was? I'm gonna summarize this. This is roughly what the argument is here. It costs a lot of money to make and distribute this massive quantity of digital copies of books without the permissions of the copyright holder. Therefore, it should be legal for the Internet Archive to do it. You following along with that? This is fascinating. This is an absolutely fascinating defense. Someone else might not be able to commit a specific crime because it's too hard to commit this crime. So, ergo, we should be allowed to commit this crime. That is the weirdest defense. That is absolutely insane. Could you imagine like the mafia being like, this will be a pretty difficult protection racket for anyone else to set up. I put a lot of investment into this. I don't think any random Joe Schmo could invest this much money into these garbage trucks and such. Therefore, it should be legal for us to run this protection racket and money laundering scheme. I rest my case, Your Honor. And my apologies for whoever I just offended by all of that. But it's just wackadoodle. You couldn't imagine a judge going, that makes sense. Okay. Like, no, I just don't see any judge being convinced by this kind of crazy logic. Like, this is, I'm not a lawyer. I'm clearly not a lawyer. Have I stood in courtrooms before and argued for cases before? Yes, I have. But am I a lawyer? No, I am not. I'm absolutely not. I look at contracts for computer companies and whatnot, but I'm not a lawyer. Just the same, I think that I and you and anyone with any basic logic can look at this and say, that doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Now, there are many other arguments made within this final brief. There's a total of 32 pages worth of arguments, a little less because there's some title pages and whatnot. So a good 20 plus pages, I guess, in total. But none were any more convincing from a logical perspective than the two I just presented here. In fact, most of the arguments tended to be entirely unrelated to the core lawsuit and the judgment, which we're going to get into next. I link directly to this brief so that you can go read it yourself if you want to. I kept coming across argument after argument, like the ones above, that if you just kind of have your eyes glaze over and you read over it, you go, that makes sense. And then you think about what it actually said for a minute, and you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense at all. Oh, it's too hard to commit this crime, therefore I should be able to do it? Come on, that's insane. So I want to pivot away from this for a moment, because we need to talk about the court of public opinion for a second, because some very strange things are happening here. And we need to be very honest with ourselves. The Internet Archive looks destined to lose this court battle. I do not see how they can win this. They are clearly in violation of the law. They've already lost once, and their appeal is, to put it very mildly, weak. Right? I don't see how they win. I mean, I could be wrong. Crazier things have happened, but I don't see how it happens. Now, maybe you and I are on the side of the Internet Archive. Maybe, right? Maybe we are such big fans of archive.org and all the work and the ability to read 60-year-old computer magazines, which I love being able to do, that we want to come to their defense. But feelings don't matter here. Only facts. And the facts are simple. The archive's actions and statements and questionable legal defense have all but ensured a loss in this case. So what happens next? What do you do when you have a profitable enterprise bringing in between $20 and $30 million per year? I linked to an article where I talk about that a little bit more in depth, again, from the Lunduke Journal, because no one else covers this stuff. What do you do when you have such a profitable enterprise that is on the verge of a potentially devastating legal ruling which could put you out of business? Because let's not mince words here. They bring in the Internet Archive between $20 and $30 million per year. They just got on the bad side in one legal case of some significant publishers where the damages could far exceed every asset that the Internet Archive currently has. Every single bit. Not just including cash, but like everything, right? And if this appeal fails, they're opening themselves up to more lawsuits because now a precedent has been set and it will become significantly easier for other publishers to sue the Internet Archive. And again, I wanted you to think about this, about how far this could go. The Internet Archive doesn't just have questionable copyright practices relating to these books. Have you looked through their software archive lately? There are hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of pieces of software, some of which are currently sold, where an active copyright is in place, active trademarks are in place, and those exact copies are currently sold via Steam or GOG or particular websites, etc., and they're available for free, digitized on archive.org. I'm just saying, that is an easy case to make that the Internet Archive is doing some illegal things here. It's a very easy case. It's an excruciatingly easy case. And once this precedent has been set and the decision has been handed down and upheld on appeal against the Internet Archive, oh doggy, oh man. Anyone who wants to come after the Internet Archive is going to be able to, and it is going to be a cakewalk. A cakewalk. People who have TV shows, concert recordings, musical albums, periodicals being published, all of it. There's a lot there. Interwoven in amongst the public domain material and the long out of print and expired copyright, there's a lot of stuff where the current copyright holder could have an easy claim of damages against the Internet Archive. This is not good. This is not good at all. So what do you do when that's happening? What do you do when you're facing total bankruptcy, when you are potentially facing completely being shut down entirely because you screwed up really bad and then screwed up your own legal defense? Well, you turn to the court of public opinion. Of course, you spin. And you spin, and you spin some more. You spin like the wind. You try and drum up public support so that you can bring in more donations, so that you get people on your side, so that you can feel better about yourself, so that you can hope to win the court of public opinion, even if you're losing in the actual legal courts. So here is a statement from Brewster Kahle, the founder of the Internet Archive, who is working to frame this as a fight for the rights of libraries. Quote, resolving this specifically talking about this court case, because remember, this is specifically about this appeal. Resolving this should be easy. Just sell ebooks to libraries so we can own, preserve, and lend them to one person at a time. This is a battle for the soul of libraries in the digital age. A battle for the soul of library. Holy heavens, the soul. The Internet Archive is battling for the soul of libraries. Oh my gosh, that is an intense statement. Clearly crafted to elicit a very emotional response, to whip people up into a frenzy, right? But let's take another look at the rest of the statement. The Internet Archive's founder says that resolving this case, quote, should be easy, and he provides a simple, easy to follow solution. So let's quote that again, just so we all have this clear. Just sell ebooks to libraries so we can own, preserve, and lend them one person at a time. Go ahead, think about that for a second. Read that again. At first, it makes total sense until you realize that it has almost nothing to do with this specific case. Let's ignore the one person at a time statement, which is a well-established lie. The Internet Archive, as we just talked about, proudly distributed digital copies of physical books to anyone who wanted them, not one person at a time. But let's ignore that. Let's pretend that part doesn't exist for a moment, because that's just ridiculous. Take a look at the proposed resolution. Note that it has very little to do with the actual case. The case is about the digitizing of physical books and distributing those digital copies without permission of the copyright holder. This proposed resolution is about selling ebooks to lenders. Now, yes, both have to do with ebooks, and yes, both have to do with lending ebooks, but that is where the similarities end. And the differences in this case are absolutely critical. Let's take a look at the actual ruling. This is the actual ruling that the judge handed down in the case where the Internet Archive lost so spectacularly. This is what they're trying to appeal. Quote from the judge: "At bottom, the Internet Archive's fair use defense rests on the notion that lawfully acquiring a copyrighted print book, purchasing a print book, entitles the recipient to make an unauthorized copy and distribute it in place of the print book, so long as it does not simultaneously lend the print book. But no case or legal principle supports that notion. Every authority points in the other direction." So again, acquiring a copyrighted print book entitles the recipient to make an unauthorized copy and distribute it in place of the print book. That's the argument that the Internet Archive is trying to make, that they can do that, right? And the law says no, you can't do that. So the Internet Archive's publicly proposed resolution does not address this ruling at all, not even a little bit, which means that when talking to the public, the Internet Archive is being dishonest about this case. But they are using very flowery language. Battle for the soul of libraries. So they'll likely manage to convince many people that they're telling the truth and representing the facts of the case fairly and honestly, even if they are not. Now, I want to be very clear about this. There are extremely important disagreements here. There really are, and I'm going to talk about this. So none of which is to say that the points which the Internet Archive is making are necessarily wrong. I disagree with some and agree with others. From the announcement of their appeal, the Internet Archive states the following, quote, "By restricting libraries' abilities to lend the books they own digitally, the publisher's license-only business model and litigation strategies perpetuate inequality in access to knowledge." Okay, now, while the statement is clearly designed to evoke specific feelings and responses, emotional responses among specific political demographics, perpetuate inequality? Okay. There is an underlying set of issues here that are worth thinking about. I'm just going to list out a couple of them here. First, is it important that libraries be able to lend official digital editions of books, right? Not physical books, but digital copies, right? Is that an important thing? Second, should publishers, authors, and other copyright holders be forced to supply digital versions of their written works to libraries, right? So basically they're saying if you've written a book, you must supply a digital version of that book for the library to lend, right? You are forced to do so as an author or as a publisher. Should that be something that is forced? It's worth at least discussing, because clearly there's disagreements here. I have one thought, and clearly the Internet Archive has another thought, but let's talk about it. 3, if digital works borrowed from a library are then copied and distributed more than the rights allow, such as not just by one person at a time, but whatever DRM on them, etc., was cracked and it was flooded on every torrent and whatnot site out there, and a billion people downloaded it, who is ultimately responsible for that? Is it the library? Is the library now financially liable for distributing what is essentially pirated material? Or is it the creator of the software system which facilitated the lending? Or is it just nobody at all? Like who is now liable here? We need to discuss these things. If we're going to have a forced system of digital lending in libraries, we need to discuss Who is responsible for various aspects of it? Number 4, should libraries or publishers be able to censor or modify digital works, or should a published digital work be maintained as it is at the time of publication? The reason I bring this up is because this comes up a lot when talking about censorship and revisions of works. If you go down, there are many, many classic books that have been released and then re-released with completely updated languages, with removed paragraphs and pages and plots, with entirely changed language in multiple places because some people found this offensive or some people just wanted to change this word here. Well, from a historical and an educational perspective, do we allow that or not allow that? How do we deal with that, right? Since it's all digital, what do we do here? Now, it's very cut and dried when we talk about physical books. You say this is the 5th printing of the book, and we can say, okay, we know if any changes were made in the 5th printing of this book. How is that going to work with libraries with forced digital compliance of ebook publishing? Like, how is that going to work? Okay, see, these are legitimate questions. And while the answers may appear obvious to me, you, or to anyone else, there truly are distinct disagreements among the publishers, the authors, and the libraries. There truly are. Me as an author, and a self-publisher, I don't want to be forced to allow libraries to be able to lend out my ebooks because I don't trust their lending systems. Now, a lot of my books I give away without DRM on them at all, and I still am antsy about that. I love libraries, love them. I want more libraries to have more abilities to send out ebooks. But this does not feel like the right way to do it. I don't like the forced system that the Internet Archive appears to be proposing here. Just the same, let's have these discussions. And some of these issues are raised by the Internet Archive or battleforlibraries.com or a bunch of other organizations out there. But none of these questions, and this is really critical here, none of these questions, not one, not even tangentially, are part of the ruling in this lawsuit. So the question that has been answered by this case, by this lawsuit, is simply this. If you buy physical media, a book, can you then take that media, digitize it, and distribute the digital copy on the internet without authorization or even notification of the copyright owner? That is the one question, though, that we firmly have answered by this court case, which the Internet Archive isn't even talking about. Notice in all of their publications and all of their statements and all their grand battle for the soul of library, all of this stuff that they're putting out there, they don't talk about the actual court case that they're fighting here, which is fascinating to me. And the answer to that question, of course, is no. You can't do that. You can't. If someone makes a book, you can't then digitize it and upload it to the internet. You can't do that. If I make a music CD and I sell a music CD and Lunduke's album of polka and jazzercise, if I sell that CD and then you rip it as MP3s and upload it for everyone to enjoy on the internet, if you don't have my permission to do so, you can't do that. That's just how that works. If you go buy go try pirating a Metallica CD and uploading it as MP3s on the internet. Their drummer will come and find you and hunt you down and attack you. You can't do that. It's just not something you can do. You may want to do that. You may think that legally you should be able to do that, but you can't. That's the law. That's how it goes. So, what happens? What happens now if the judge chooses to uphold the existing judgment against the Internet Archive? Oh man, the can of worms is huge. A number of things seem possible, with some of these possibilities seem like a downright certainty. The first possibility is that publishers, authors, and copyright holders of works distributed by the Internet Archive may choose to seek damages beyond just this court case. Which could put the Internet Archive in a very precarious financial position, to say the least. I do not see how they could continue to exist. There's just too much potential here for lawsuits coming at them fast and furious. I don't see how they make it. The Internet Archive may be forced to remove other content of questionable copyright, software, videos, audio archives, periodicals, well, just about everything. How about websites? A lot of those websites have copyrights on them. There is a copyright notice on a lot of websites. If the Internet Archive makes a copy of those websites and serves them up to people, I love the Wayback Machine. I love the fact that the archive.org Wayback Machine archives the World Wide Web. I just talked about that. It's a valuable resource. But legally, that is, in many cases, a violation of copyright, and the Internet Archive is breaking the law. They are. I'm sorry, they are. At best, it is an extremely gray area, and that's being really, really generous to the Internet Archive. It does not seem all that gray to me. Third, other archival projects, right, outside of the Internet Archive may now come under increased scrutiny as well, thus making it riskier to archive and distribute various types of material, right? The Internet Archive isn't the only project out there that scans books or tries to archive old recordings or publications. Whether they're little hobbyist projects or more professional projects like the Internet Archive with millions of dollars in donations coming in every year, tens of millions, they're all going to come under increased scrutiny now, because now we have increasing amounts of precedent for scanning physical material and making them digital and then providing them for people to download. This is going to be a problem. How many websites do you know that say have, I don't know, Commodore 64 magazines scanned and available as a PDF? Who owns the copyright on those? They may not be in print anymore, but who owns the copyright? And how are they feeling right now? Yeah, this could be really tricky and really sticky for a lot of people. And of course, the Internet Archive could attempt to appeal this case ever higher. Right? They could keep going all the way up to the top, which could be really tricky considering their absolutely terrible defense thus far. And again, the Internet Archive could win this appeal. It's unlikely, but hey, weirder things have happened, right? I hope the Internet Archive, I hope Brewster Kahle and everyone else are watching. I hope they read this article with all of the concern and love that is included here. Because it really was written coming from a good place. In this case, some tough love is very, very much needed. From a logical and legal standpoint, the Internet Archive is in an absolutely devastatingly precarious position of their own making. Every step of the way, they made a bad decision. They made a bad decision with how they handled their controlled digital lending program. They made a bad decision when they opened it up and made it available for absolutely everyone to download an unlimited number of copies of books. That's crazy. Of course, you're going to come under the radar and the crosshairs of publishers when you do that. Oh my gosh, man. If you were flying under the radar before, you're not anymore. Their way they handled their legal defense is a borderline malpractice. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, reading through the arguments, it reads like it was written by a toddler who was throwing a temper tantrum who did not have an understanding of the law. All the lawyers out there who were involved in writing this up, who are frothing at the mouth right now, deal with it. And this is terrible. This is really poorly written. And if you disagree with any of that, tell me how you disagree. Tell me publicly, tell me privately, and I'll publish it, whatever. But let's talk about it. And then on top of all of that, the Internet Archive and their founder go out there and they try and drum up all of this public sympathy by essentially being dishonest about the case and about what the case entails. There are, like I pointed out, legitimate discussions that could be had right now about online digital lending, about how to handle libraries when the majority or an increasing number of the materials are digital in nature, because many libraries right now have digital lending systems in place. The Internet Archive is not breaking any ground here. My local library in my relatively small town has a digital lending system in place. They don't have these issues because they did so legally. In fact, many of these publishers provide digital lending systems at very low cost to many libraries. That's already a thing that's in place. Now, it's kind of haphazard and hodgepodge because this publisher's doing it this way and that publisher's doing it that way, and there's like 5 different nonprofits making their own systems for it, and maybe there needs to be a standard. Maybe there should be some more consistency. Maybe there should be a discussion about how it's handled, and to be fair to both the publishers, the libraries, the public, everybody, right? Like, let's have those discussions. But none of that is in this lawsuit. And the Internet Archive is trying to pretend like it is. And that, to me, is astoundingly dishonest, and it's disappointing. It's going to end poorly. But as it's ending poorly, people are going to be whipped up into a frenzy about the battle for the soul of libraries and all this sort of thing, like as if these publishers are being some evil corporations, and as if this is some sort of weird indictment of copyright. We can have discussions about all that, but let's do it factually and logically. And let's do it, the Internet Archive, let's do it in a way that actually benefits the Internet Archive instead of dramatically harms the Internet Archive. It's like the Internet Archive's leadership has been hell-bent on destroying the Internet Archive for several years now. What on earth are they doing? It's insane. So that's that. The article is up if you want to go read it over at lunduke.locals.com, the main site for the Lunduke Journal. It's free for everyone to read. Most articles out of the Lunduke Journal are free for everyone to read. If you go to lunduke.com, if you just go to lunduke.com, you get what's called the Lunduke Journal Link Central. And from there, you can get links to the podcast RSS feeds and a large number, not a complete amount, but a good number of articles are also categorized there. Historical pieces, dispelling various computer history myths, some more breaking news things, some stuff that just doesn't get covered anywhere else. I recommend scrolling through there. You can also watch some of my bigger video shows there. Again, it's all free. Most of it is free for everyone, but if you want to subscribe, you get a few extra exclusives, and you help make the Lunduke Journal possible. We don't do any ads. We don't take money from big tech. We don't take money from little tech. We don't take corporate sponsorships of any kind. I just literally turned down another sponsorship offer just yesterday. We turn them down regularly because the moment the Lunduke Journal takes sponsorships, runs ads for corporations, then we're beholden to them. Right? And we need to be able to speak the truth. There's simply not enough people in the tech journalist space reporting on the tech news who are free to speak the truth in an unfettered way. No matter which outlet you look at, whether it's The Verge or The Register or ZDNet or whatever, Wired, they're just filled to the brim with ads for dozens, if not hundreds of different companies over the course of a given month. And they can't afford to make those companies mad. The Lunduke Journal can. I don't care if I make a company mad. I care about reporting the truth. And I'm going to continue reporting the truth. I don't care if I make an organization that I love mad. I love the archive.org. I love the Internet Archive. It's fantastic. I mean, they've made some stupid decisions, and you know what? They should probably get in trouble for them because they made some bad decisions, some real bonehead moves. But I don't care. I don't care if it makes them mad. I'm still going to tell the truth. And I get to do that thanks to all the subscribers. So thank you to all of you at lunduke.locals.com for making this possible. I absolutely could not do it without you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.